Good morning. Welcome back to the KR Daily Transmission. I'm on the road for my birthday adventure, and I'm really happy to be here with you again. This month, we are discussing the topic of self-love, and we're dedicating actually all of February to the topic of self-love, which is, I believe, one of the most challenging as well as rewarding topics that we can address in the spiritual journey. And although self-love is often associated with bubble baths and rose petals and long walks on the ocean, by the ocean, I should say, self-love is something that needs to happen every single day. And it's honestly a moment by moment, hour by hour commitment that we're making, where we are choosing to bask in a love that is safe for our own hearts. We are choosing to take refuge in a love that is not dependent upon the love of others. We are choosing to return to the source of all divine love and all unconditional love, which is our own source, our higher self, our divinity. And so we're going to be talking about a wide range of tools and techniques for how to stay really present in your self-love practice. And today I'd like to talk about a tool that is extremely simple. I mean, I feel almost silly talking about it, but that wouldn't be self-love, would it? If my soul is telling me this is what we need to talk about today, then I'm going to trust that and say, thank you. I love you. Thanks for that offering. And I'm going to share it instead of shaming myself out of it. So, and that's a perfect example of, what happens when we're leading. That's why self-love is so important, because so often what we think we have to share isn't really that relevant or important enough, but in truth it is. And it's your self-love that will ensure the message gets delivered. So again, I'm going to restate, this is incredibly simple, but it's super powerful, and it changed my life. And when I started doing it, and when you are really struggling in moments with loving yourself, we often try to turn to anything other than this very simple statement, which is, I love you. Telling yourself out loud, I love you, as many times as your heart needs to hear it to be able to come back to a resting place of feeling safe and harmonious within you. So as we shared yesterday, as we were discussing yesterday, there are so many parts of our consciousness, and some parts of our consciousness are extremely evolved, and other parts of our consciousness are just kind of operating our human existence on a subconscious level. And then there's parts of our consciousness that have been traumatized or wounded or are holding back from the part of our consciousness that is our higher self, and those parts of our consciousness that are extremely empowered. So when you begin the process of waking up, there is this awakening to how many voices, feelings, perspectives actually live inside of you. And it can feel exhausting, and it can feel confusing, and it can feel as though we want to reach out to something outside of ourselves that can somehow solve all the voices and quiet them all into something that's like a blissful state, a continuous blissful state. But the reality is that all of those perspectives, all of those feelings, all of those thoughts, they're all a part of you, and they all want your attention, and no one can save you from them. Nor would anyone really want to, because you're a sovereign being. And learning how to love every part of you and learning how to come into communion with every part of you, that's the real journey of self-love. Can that happen in a bubble bath? You betcha. I take baths all the time to have really good conversations with my heart and the different parts of my consciousness. But It also happens when I'm driving my car. It happens when I'm opening an email. It happens when I'm getting ready to do a video. It happens when, I walk to my writing desk. It happens when, I try to take time off and there's a part of my consciousness that, doesn't want to. It's a dialogue that's ever present. And I'm hoping that, maybe me laughing at a little bit at my own human experience is helping you laugh at your own and just saying like, oh yeah, of course, right. This is the power. This is the journey of self-love. It's coming into an awareness that there are so many parts within us that are seeking our loving attention, that are curious about, who is the one within us, creating space for all of these perspectives and all of these feelings to exist within a unified field. But when we are having a really challenging moment, we don't care about consciousness necessarily. We just want to make the pain stop, or we want to make the resistance stop, or the discomfort stop, because it can get so uncomfortable when we do not feel love towards ourselves. Perhaps, a relationship ended, or that was unexpected, or, there's a change in some aspect of your life, whether it's job, money, family, career, you name it. There are so many reasons, that there's so many experiences that we can have in any aspect of our life that can really influence how we feel about ourselves. And yesterday we talked about making a vow to self-love, so that vow is guiding us and reminding us in every present moment, no matter what we are feeling, which will pass, no matter what we are experiencing, which will change into a different experience. Our vow is to love ourselves and the parts of our consciousness, especially the parts of our consciousness that are having a difficult time with whatever feelings or experiences that are arising next. And so the first step when you are having a really rough moment is to say, I love you. I love you and I accept you right here and right now, exactly as you are. And you can say that as many times as you need to. And you can talk to yourself out loud if you need to. I do it all the time. Everybody's walking around with iPod, earpods, some kind of headphone situation on. It doesn't even matter if you're talking out loud to yourself. Everyone's going to think you're talking on your phone. I share about that in the Stargate 2 curriculum. It's actually a very healthy thing to do. You don't have to do it in front of a mirror. You can do it while you're washing your dishes or driving your car. Just have a conversation with your own heart where you say, I love you. I love you. Good morning. Good morning, beautiful person that I get to wake up and love and be all day long. How are you, body? How are you, heart? How are you, mind? I'm present and accounted for, and I love you. And we're going to have a great day. And if that part of you responds back, no, we're not going to have a great day, because here's why. I'm still thinking about what he said the other day and how crappy that made me feel. Or no, we're not, because I'm on my way to work and I don't want to go to work today. It's just like, there's going to be different parts of your consciousness that might argue with your good wishes for yourself that day. And the first step is to say, I love you. The next step is to say, wow, tell me more about that. I'm so curious what's coming up for you. And I know I'm speaking as though when we say, and we talk about the different parts of our consciousness almost as though it's another person, this is not to fracture your perception of yourself in any way. In fact, to momentarily pause and picture a part of your consciousness and allow that part of your consciousness to almost be like an avatar that you're having a conversation with, it allows for your own awareness to just relax into this dialogue between you and you. And that dialogue is so healing that it returns you to an even deeper state of wholeness by the end of the dialogue, where you are kind of ciphering out a part of yourself to directly speak into the eyes of that part of your consciousness. When we start the conversation with, I love you, and you can even say, wow, that's really difficult for me to hear because I'm so happy this morning and you clearly are not. I've had that conversation a lot on this adventure, which has been really, really fascinating for me to experience. And then, being able to create the space, the safe emotional space to just listen without over talking or over spiritualizing what that part of your consciousness wants to share with you in that moment. And they might say something that you want to kind of jump forward and say, well, we don't believe that. We believe XYZ. And this is our empowerment mantra for today. And it's good to have empowerment mantras. It's wonderful to reprogram your mind with empowerment mantras. But when there's a part of your consciousness that is triggered, they don't want to hear your empowerment mantra. That part of your consciousness wants you to listen to what they feel disturbed about or unsafe about or triggered or angry or sad about. And if you listen and have a dialogue with that part of your consciousness, just as you would with somebody outside of you, a friend, a relative, a child that you care about deeply, if you allow yourself to be curious in the same way that you would be for someone outside of you, there's going to be so many revelations of the places within you that are showing themselves to receive more of your true, genuine love. Because when you say, I love you to every part of yourself, there's going to be parts of yourself that speak up and say, oh, really? Do you love me too? I'm the crazy inner teenager that wants to ruin your career. Do you love me? Are you going to pay attention to me? Or, hey, I'm the 5-year-old that wants to eat a bunch of ice cream, even though I know you're allergic to sugar. It's just like, but if you don't give me the ice cream, I'm going to feel sad forever, even though you as the adult know, eating a pint of ice cream, not going to make a Friday better. So, it's just like there are deep conversations to have between you and all these different parts of you. And at first, when you start saying, I love you, and those conversations start to pop up, you think, shoot, am I not saying I love you the right way? Why aren't these parts just softening into my love? And it's because these are parts of ourselves that we may have been ignoring or pushing away or too afraid to have a conversation with for years. So step one to understanding your self-love and a genuine self-love practice is that when you start to say, I love you to your own heart, there's going to be parts of your consciousness that pipe up and fight back and say, do you really love me? Prove it. Let's have these conversations. So my next suggestion for you is you've got to have a journaling practice if you're going to have a real self-love practice. When you allow this dialogue between your adult awareness, I don't even want to call it the adult awareness. It's just like your most conscious present awareness, the forefront of your mind, when it is allowed to dialogue on paper with different parts of your consciousness that may be more subconscious or related to your inner child, or even related to a wounded part of yourself that's attempting to reintegrate into your consciousness. Witnessing that dialogue, allowing that dialogue to move through your pen is one of the fastest ways to become familiar with this process. You don't always need a journal to do it, but starting out having these intense dialogues with different parts of my consciousness, it really became possible because I practiced through writing first. And then over the years, I was able to just remember when those parts of my consciousness start to act up because they want more love, they want more attention, they want to share more, and they want to be understood, and they want to learn more. There's parts of your consciousness that want to learn more from your adult awareness, such as aspects of your inner child, of why they are safe now in the present moment versus their reality in the past. And so as you practice this dialogue through your journaling, you learn how to have this conversation with yourself anywhere at any time, either out loud or silently within. You can have that conversation with these parts of yourself while you're having tea with a friend, or you're in a group situation, which can be, all sorts of interesting momentary triggers can arise when you're in a community context or the group of friends or a dinner or gathering. And you don't even have to skip a beat in the conversation with someone outside of yourself, because you can be silently tending to your own heart and quietly speaking to the different parts of yourself within. And that's learning how to love yourself at a very sophisticated level. When people see individuals who are extremely articulate or empowered, that are able to face challenges in real time with grace and clarity, it's because what you're witnessing in those people is that there's a dialogue unfolding within them that's reassuring and loving their own heart through the whole challenge. They're well practiced at that. And when you genuinely step into a journey of inner child healing and a vow to self-love, it's not as simple as just saying, I love you. It's, I love you and I'm listening. It's, I love you and I'm willing to have this conversation with you. Just like any of our important relationships in life, they don't work unless we're listening to one another. That's not real relating, is listening to one another. It's being available to listen to one another. And it's the same journey with your own heart, with the different parts of your consciousness within you. So remember, when things get really rough, it's, I love you and I'm listening. I'm willing to listen. Now notice if a part of your consciousness starts to share something that's extremely unpleasant or uncomfortable for you, such as an old memory or an old trauma, or just an old grudge, even an old grudge. You can take a moment. You don't have to talk over that part of your consciousness. Just breathe in and ask your higher self for what this part of your consciousness needs to hear. So for example, my adult self loves the forest. I mean, like, loves being in the mountains, in the forest. I love camping by myself. I'm a bit of a wild woman. I just love trees. I love getting lost in a river, being on an ocean. Like, I'm super adventurous. And on this particular trip, it was my deep desire to be with some very specific trees. And I didn't realize just how much my inner child, as much as she also loves nature, she is honestly terrified of being alone in the forest. And I've never really picked up on this until recently. And that spectrum of extreme love and extreme terror within me, I wasn't really listening to this part of myself and having the conversation with myself that needed to happen. And as I slowed my roll and started to ask, why are you afraid of what you love? Because I know you love these trees. I know you love being in the forest like I do. This is me having a conversation with my inner kiddo. And she was like, well, there were some really horrible things that happened in the woods, when I was my age, that I was subjected to. And it was just like, I don't know why I never made that connection. I just didn't until this trip. And it was absolutely amazing to make that connection. And how do you respond when that a part of your consciousness admits to you why she, he, they feel afraid of something that doesn't seem reasonable? The first response is perfectly reasonable that you feel that way given what you experienced or survived. And even if it feels uncomfortable to say this, I highly suggest you say, tell me more about that. Is there anything else you'd like to share? And if you really are listening, your inner child or that part of your consciousness that is feeling a lack of love will share with you. And here's another piece of information that's going to be really helpful for you. Just because they feel a certain way about something doesn't mean your adult self has to feel the same way about it. Just because there's parts of you that might be grieving or sad from the past, it doesn't mean that your human adult present moment self has to feel the same way about the past that this part of your consciousness does. The one that is empowered and healing and feels whole to you can take care of that part of your consciousness that's still catching up, that's still learning that it's safe to trust the present moment. So I really recommend not taking it personally when there's parts of your consciousness that say, I hate you, I hate doing this, I don't like this, you're not good to me, when none of that might be true. Maybe some of it's true. I don't know. But I know in my particular case, what I've had to start to identify is, oh, that is a scared part of me that's having a really hard time in saying whatever they can say to get my attention. The truth is, I genuinely love myself. And this part of me is ready to be loved next in a much deeper way. And so I think this is something that happens that can be very confusing on the spiritual journey for a lot of spiritually aspiring individuals, earth angels and light workers, is we practice so much intentional empowerment. And I, myself included, I think it's fantastic. I mean, if you know how the quantum reality works, like you really want to be staying focused on the positive and living a healthy, sober life to your sovereign divinity. I mean, like things are going to go in your favor again and again for that willingness to be empowered and to stay empowered. And with that said, there are parts of our consciousness that just need genuine love. They don't need to be empowered. The love that you bring to them is the empowerment, the willingness to listen to those parts of yourself that need to be tenderly held and compassionately responded to. That's the empowerment. It's not telling your wounded child that she's Superwoman. It's telling your wounded inner child, I'm listening. That's perfectly reasonable that you feel that way. I'm so sorry that happened to you. What can I do to help you feel safer in this moment, or more loved, or more connected to my body, to our body, to the fact that we are one? Again, this is always super vulnerable for me to share on this topic, but it feels really good. And I want to thank you for spending this moment together for this KR Daily transmission to really consider some of these talking points, some of these tools for effectively dialoguing into greater love for yourself with all the parts of your consciousness. We're not here to we're not here to spiritually bypass those parts within us that we think aren't good enough to love. We are here to gather all the parts of our consciousness, the wild parts, the gangster parts, the mean parts, the depressed parts, the grieving parts, the outraged parts. And, we're here to put our arms around all those parts of our consciousness and say, hey, You're allowed here too. And I love you, and you have information for me, and I have information for you. Our present moment can be beautiful, and you're invited to the feast, to this table of love. You look hungry, you look tired. Would you like some more love? Would you like some more of this food from the feast of my heart? I'm listening. And there's going to be days where parts of your consciousness sits down to that table to eat dinner with you, and they throw food in your face like a baby, or they start screaming at the table. And you're watching a part of yourself screaming from within. Why are they screaming? They're screaming because that's how unloved that part of yourself has felt for so long. And they want the solution just like you do. But again, the solution isn't spiritually bypassing these conversations. A genuine self-love practice is having those tough conversations with yourself in a very curious, dynamic, and compassionate way that allows for greater understanding of your own experience, your own heart, your own heroic human journey that no one else can understand the way you can understand for you. We can have loving partners, compassionate friends, inspiring community members, amazing coaches and mentors, but ultimately, you are the ultimate coach. You are the ultimate mentor. You are the ultimate lover of your own heart. It's so exciting to be exploring these topics with you in February, which we've dedicated to self-love. I hope some of these insights were helpful for you. Please be sure to write your comments in the replay, and like this video and subscribe to my channel if these KR daily transmissions are blessing your life. It's such a joy to be here with you. Thank you so much. We'll see you again tomorrow. Namaste.